there's a man sitting by the side of a road. He's been there for over 30 years. Same spot, same worn-out cap on the ground in front of him. Every day he asks the people walking past for a few coins, and every day they either drop something in or they don't. One afternoon a stranger walks by. The beggar holds out his cap, mumbles the words he said 1,000,000 times, but the stranger stops. He looks down and says, "I have nothing to give you, but tell me, what's that you're sitting on?" The beggar shrugs. "Nothing, just an old box. I've been sitting on it as long as I can remember." "Have you ever looked inside?" "Why would I? There's nothing in there." The stranger insists, and finally, tired of arguing, the old man pries the lid open. It's filled with gold. He'd been begging for scraps his entire life, sitting on top of a fortune, never once thinking to look down. Now here's the uncomfortable part. This isn't really a story about a beggar. It's a story about you and me and almost everyone alive right now. Because according to Eckhart Tolle, most of us are doing exactly what that man did. We're searching everywhere for peace, for meaning, for the thing that will finally make us feel okay while sitting on top of it the entire time. So where's the gold, and why can't we feel it? That's what this whole thing is about. And to understand it, we have to start with a strange night that happened to a man who was, by his own admission, completely broken. For the first 30 years of his life, Eckhart Tolle was miserable. Not in a poetic way, in a real way. He lived in almost constant anxiety, broken up only by stretches of suicidal depression. And one night, at his lowest point, he woke up in the early hours filled with a dread so total that everything around him felt alien and hostile. He could barely stand to exist. And a single thought kept circling in his head: I cannot live with myself any longer. Most people would just sink into that thought, but something strange happened. He suddenly noticed how odd the sentence was. I cannot live with myself. Wait, if I can't live with myself, then there must be two of me. The I and the self that I can't stand. And if there are two, maybe only one of them is actually real. And in that instant, his mind just stopped. He described feeling pulled into a kind of void, terrified, and then he heard something inside him say, resist nothing. So he let go, he fell. When he woke up the next morning, a bird was chirping outside his window, and he said it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard, like a precious diamond. Light was coming through the curtains and it looked like love itself. He wept. Everything looked brand new, alive, glowing. And that feeling of deep peace didn't fade the next day or the next week. It stayed. For months. For years. Later, people started coming to him. They'd say, I want what you have. Can you give it to me? And his answer became the seed of everything. He'd say, you have it already. You just can't feel it because your mind is making too much noise. You have it already. You're sitting on the box of gold. So let's talk about that noise. Because it turns out it's the single most important thing standing between you and the peace you're looking for. Right now, as you're listening to this, there's a voice in your head. And I don't mean my voice. I mean yours. The one that never seems to shut up. The one commenting, judging, worrying, replaying that awkward thing you said 3 years ago, rehearsing an argument you might have next week. It narrates constantly. And here's the thing Tolle points out that's genuinely unsettling once you really see it. You think that voice is you. It is. Think about it for a second. If you can hear the voice, who's listening? There's the thinker and there's the one aware of the thinker. And the one aware, the silent presence noticing all of it, that's the real you. The voice is just something happening inside you, like weather. Tolle calls confusing the two the greatest obstacle to a peaceful life. We've been so thoroughly convinced that we are our thoughts that we've never questioned it. There's a famous line by the philosopher Descartes, I think, therefore I am. For centuries it was treated as a profound truth. Tolle says it's actually one of the most basic errors a human can make, because it glues your entire sense of existing to the act of thinking, as if you'd stop being real the moment the chatter stopped. But here's what's wild. Researchers who study this stuff estimate that something like 80 to 90% of the average person's thinking is repetitive. The same loops, the same worries, the same old record playing over and over. It's not helping you. It's not solving anything. It's just running like a program nobody remembers installing. Tolle goes as far as to call it a disease, not to be dramatic, but because of how it works. Healthy cells in your body divide and grow in harmony with the whole organism. But when a cell starts multiplying with no regard for the rest of the body, ignoring the bigger picture, we have a name for that. We call it cancer. And compulsive thinking, thought that can't stop, thought that, forgotten it's supposed to serve you, behaves in a strangely similar way. So the obvious question is, how do you turn it off? And the answer is deceptively simple. You don't fight it, you watch it. Start listening to that inner voice like you're eavesdropping on a stranger. Don't argue with it. Don't judge it, because the moment you judge it, you've just started thinking again and the same voice sneaks back in through the back door. You just observe. Notice a thought arise. Notice it pass. And here's the magic. The very act of watching creates a tiny gap, a moment of silence between thoughts, a little pocket of stillness. Tolle says the more you do this, the more those gaps widen. And in those gaps, you start to feel something. A quiet. A peace that was there the whole time, just buried under the noise. That, he says, is the essence of meditation. Not emptying your mind by force. Just watching until the watching itself makes you still. And you don't need a mountaintop to do it. You can do it washing the dishes, walking up the stairs, feeling the water on your hands. Give one ordinary moment your full attention and you've stepped out of your head and into your life. That's the whole practice. It sounds almost too small to matter. But hold on, because this is where it gets deeper. Once you understand that you're not your thoughts, a much bigger question opens up. Why do we think so compulsively in the first place? What is all that noise actually protecting us from? The answer is pain, and not just the pain you're feeling now. The pain you've been carrying for years. Tolle describes something he calls the pain body, and once you understand it, you'll start seeing it everywhere, especially in yourself. Here's the idea. Every time in your life you felt real emotional pain and didn't fully face it in the moment, a little residue of that pain stayed behind. A breakup you never processed, a childhood wound, a humiliation, a loss. Over the years, all these leftover fragments accumulate, and they merge into a kind of energy field that lives inside you. An old pain that has, in a sense, taken on a life of its own. And this is the strange, almost eerie part. The pain body wants to survive, and the only thing it can feed on is more pain. You've probably experienced this without having a name for it. You wake up one morning and for no reason at all you feel heavy, irritable, like there's a dark cloud sitting on your chest. Then someone says one slightly wrong thing and you explode, far harder than the situation deserved. Afterward you think, where did that come from? That wasn't me. That was the pain body waking up. It had been dormant and something triggered it and suddenly it took you over. And here's the trap. While it's in control, it will actually push you to create more conflict, more drama, more suffering. Because pain is its food. As Tolle puts it, pain can only feed on pain. It cannot feed on joy. So how do you starve it? You'd think the answer is to fight it, to push it down, distract yourself, run. But that's exactly backwards. Fighting your pain is just more resistance, and resistance is what feeds it. You can't fight darkness. You can only bring light. So instead, you do the same thing you did with the thinker. You watch it. When that heaviness rises, you turn toward it. You feel it directly, the raw sensation in your body, without slapping a story on top of it. You don't think about it. You don't analyze why. You don't say, here I go again, I'm such a mess. You just stay present with it as the silent observer, and you become aware of the one who is observing. And something almost alchemical happens. In the old legends, alchemists tried to turn base metal into gold. Tolle says conscious presence does something similar with pain. When you hold your suffering in the light of pure awareness, without resistance, it can't sustain itself. It starts to dissolve. The pain literally becomes fuel for the flame of your consciousness. Suffering transmuted into presence. Now he's honest that this is hard. Sometimes you'll feel a strange resistance to letting your pain go, and it's worth sitting with why. Sometimes our identity gets so wrapped up in our wounds that, deep down, a part of us doesn't want to be free. Being in pain feels familiar. Letting go feels like stepping into the unknown. So we cling to the very thing that's hurting us. But underneath all of it, there's one root fear driving the whole machine. And here, where Tolle takes us somewhere unexpected. All fear, he says, is ultimately the ego's fear of death, of not existing. And the ego, that false self made of thoughts and memories and roles, is terrified of anything that threatens it. Which is why, for example, so many people have a desperate, compulsive need to be right. Have you ever noticed how hard it is for some people to admit they're wrong, even about something tiny? Tolle explains it perfectly. To the ego, being wrong feels like dying. Your mental position is part of your identity, so if the position is defeated, some part of you feels annihilated. That's why arguments get so heated over things that don't even matter. It's not really about the topic. It's about survival. Sit with that the next time you're gripping onto being right. You might catch the ego red-handed. So we've got the noisy mind and the hungry pain body, but there's a deeper mechanism underneath both of them. Something that quietly runs almost every unhappy moment of human life, and it's something we've been taught to treat as precious. It's time. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you experienced anything at all, outside of the present moment? You can't, it's impossible. Think back to your happiest memory. When you actually lived it, it was happening now. Think about tomorrow, your big plans, your worries. When they finally arrive, they'll arrive as now. The past is just a memory, and a memory only exists as a thought happening in the present. The future is just imagination, and you can only imagine it now. Tolle puts it plainly. The past and the future have no reality of their own. They're like the moon. The moon has no light of its own, it only reflects the sun. And the past and future only borrow their reality from the eternal, ever-present now. There's a lovely little thought experiment he offers. Imagine the earth with no humans on it, just plants and animals. Now imagine you could ask an oak tree or an eagle, "What time is it?" They'd be baffled by the question. "What do you mean? It's now. The time is now. What else could there ever be?" Time, in the way we obsess over it, is a creation of the human mind. Now Tolle is careful here because this is where people misunderstand him. He's not saying throw away your calendar. There's what he calls clock time, and that's completely fine and useful. Making an appointment, planning a trip, learning from a mistake, that's practical and you need it. The problem is a different kind of time. Psychological time. That's when you don't just visit the past to learn, but you live there, drowning in guilt and regret. Or you don't just plan the future, but you mentally move into it, consumed by anxiety about things that haven't happened and mostly never will. And notice the pattern. Where does guilt live? In the past. Where does anxiety live? In the future. Almost all of your suffering is stored in a place that doesn't actually exist right now. When you're fully in the present, really in it, notice something. Do you have a problem in this exact second? Not a worry about tomorrow. Not a regret about yesterday. Right now in this breath, is there actually a problem? Almost always the answer is no. Tolle makes a striking claim here. There are no problems. There are only situations. A situation is something you either deal with now or accept now. A problem is what the mind creates when it drags in the past and the future and endlessly turns something over without any intention of acting on it. Problems are mental. They need time to survive. Take away the time and the problem as a problem can't exist. This is why he draws a line between your life and your life situation. Your life situation is all the stuff, the bills, the relationships, the career worries, the story of who you are and what's going wrong. It exists in time in the mind. But your life, your actual life, is only ever happening now. When people feel completely overwhelmed and buried, Tolle's advice is almost startling in its simplicity. Forget your life situation for a moment. Just for a moment. and pay attention to your life. To this breath, this sound, the feeling of the ground under you. Narrow everything down to this instant and ask, right now, am I okay? Underneath the mountain of your life situation, there's almost always a life that is, in this moment, perfectly fine. The tragedy is how easily we miss it. There's a story Carl Jung once told about a Native American chief who had observed white settlers for a long time, and the chief said something that stayed with people for a century. He noticed that these people had tense faces, staring eyes, a kind of cruelty about them. They were always seeking something, always restless, never at ease. "We don't understand what they want," the chief said. "We think they are mad." Always seeking, never arriving. That's the quiet madness Tolle is describing. The belief that peace is somewhere out there, somewhere ahead, when it's the ground you're already standing on. So if the mind is so good at pulling us out of the now, how do we actually stay in it? Because understanding all this intellectually is nice, but Tolle is blunt about this. Intellectual agreement is just another belief, and it won't change your life. So he gives us an anchor, something physical, and it's probably the single most practical idea in the whole book. Feel your inner body. Here, try it right now just for a second. Without looking, can you feel your hands? Not look at them, feel them from the inside. That subtle tingling, that sense of aliveness humming in your palms. There. That's it. That's the doorway. Tolle says the visible body you see in the mirror is just a thin outer shell. Underneath it is what he calls the inner body, the felt sense of life energy that animates you from within. And that inner aliveness is your direct link to being, to that deep, peaceful essence underneath all the noise. When even a little of your attention is resting in that inner body, you can't be fully lost in thought at the same time. It roots you. It keeps you here. And this is where Tolle corrects one of the oldest mistakes in the history of spirituality. For thousands of years, seekers have tried to reach enlightenment by escaping the body, fasting it into submission, punishing it, treating it as sinful, an obstacle. Even the Buddha, the story goes, spent 6 years torturing his body with extreme deprivation, nearly starving to death, searching for freedom. And he didn't find it. He found it only after he gave that up. As Tolle puts it, transformation is through the body, not away from it. You can use this anywhere. Stuck in traffic. Instead of gripping the wheel and letting your mind spin, drop your attention into your body. Feel your hands, your legs, the aliveness inside you. Tolle says something almost funny here, that traffic jams and waiting in line can actually become enjoyable because you turn dead, frustrating time into a doorway to peace. When you're really listening to someone you love, don't just listen with your ears. Feel your own inner body while they speak. It'll make you more present with them than you've ever been. And Tolle says giving someone your full presence is one of the greatest gifts you can offer another person. But there's one thing that can block the door, and it's a big one: old grievances, the grudges we carry, the resentments, the "I'll never forgive them for what they did." Tolle reframes forgiveness in a way that has nothing to do with letting the other person off the hook. Forgiveness, he says, is simply offering no resistance to life. It's setting down a burden that was only ever weighing on you, and he points out that only you can do it in the present. The mind can't forgive. The mind wants to keep the case open, keep the story alive. But you, the conscious presence, can simply let it go. Which brings us to what all of this has been building toward. The last and maybe the most challenging piece. Because life won't always hand you calm moments to practice with. Sometimes it hands you loss, illness, disaster, situations you can't think or feel your way out of. And Tolle's answer to those moments is a single word that most people completely misunderstand. Surrender. I know how that sounds. Surrender sounds like giving up, weakness, waving the white flag and letting life crush you, but Tolle means almost the opposite. Surrender, he says, is the simple but profound wisdom of yielding to, rather than opposing, the flow of life. It's not about your actions. It's about what's happening inside you. It's the choice to stop the inner war against this moment, against what already is. Picture this. You're driving down a foggy road at night and you can barely see anything ahead. The whole road is swallowed up, but you have a powerful flashlight and it lights up the small patch of ground right in front of you, clear and bright. That patch of light is the now. The fog is your whole life situation, all the uncertainty ahead. You can't light up the entire road at once. You were never meant to. You just illuminate the one step in front of you and take it. That's surrender. Not accepting the whole overwhelming situation, just saying yes to this one moment, this small patch of light. And here's what people get wrong. Surrender does not mean you don't act. Tolle's formula is beautiful in its simplicity, accept then act. First you stop resisting the reality of what is. Then from that calm, clear place you do whatever needs to be done. He gives the plainest example. Imagine your car gets stuck in the mud. You don't sit there and shout, "This shouldn't be happening. This is a disaster." That changes nothing. It just adds suffering to the situation. And you also don't say, "Well, I surrender. I guess I'll just live in this mud forever." No, you accept calmly, "Okay, the car is stuck." And then you get out and you push. The action from acceptance is clear and effective. The action from resistance is frantic and drains you. But what about the situations where there's nothing you can do? The diagnosis, the grief that can't be fixed, the loss that can't be undone. Tolle says even then you always have a way through. He calls it the two chances at surrender. The first chance is to accept the outer situation. But when you truly can't, when the outside is unbearable, there's a second chance. You surrender to the pain itself. You stop running from the grief, the fear, the ache, and you turn toward it and feel it fully, completely, without labeling it, without the mind story. Full attention, he says, is full acceptance, is surrender. And in that total surrender to the feeling, something shifts. The suffering starts to burn away. As he puts it, when there is no way out, there is still always a way through. He tells of men on death row, in their final hours with nothing left to do, nowhere left to run. And some of them, forced into complete acceptance of the unacceptable, described entering a state of profound peace they'd never known in their entire lives. If surrender can bring peace there in the most extreme situation imaginable, then it can reach you wherever you are. And this points to Tolle's final, quietly hopeful message. For most of human history, people have only awakened this way through the crushing weight of suffering. The loss so great it finally breaks the ego open. He calls it the old way, the way of the cross, but he says there's another way now. You don't have to wait for tragedy to force you awake. You can choose it consciously, right now. Because, as he warns, if you think you need more time to become free, you'll simply get more time and more pain. Time and pain, he says, are inseparable. So let's go back to that beggar, sitting on his box of gold, because now you understand what the gold actually is. It was never money. It was never out there in some future where you finally fixed everything. The gold is this moment, the quiet aliveness underneath your thoughts, the peace that doesn't need any reason to exist. It's been under you the entire time. You just never looked down. Everything I've shared with you here is really only the doorway. The power of now goes so much further, with a depth and a stillness that honestly can't be captured in one video. There are passages in it that people describe reading again and again over the years, finding something new each time. If any part of this stirred something in you, if you felt even a flicker of that recognition, like some part of you already knew this, then the full book is genuinely worth your time. You'll find it linked below. Not as a quick read, but as something to sit with. But you don't have to wait for that. You don't have to wait for anything. Because the one thing Tolle would want you to take from all of this, you can do this very second. Just stop. For one breath, stop reaching for the next moment. Stop replaying the last one. Feel your hands. Notice the aliveness in your body. Listen to the silence underneath the sounds around you. And realize that right here, in this ordinary, unremarkable instant, nothing is actually missing. You've been sitting on the gold the whole time. All you ever had to do was look.